Greetings all, and this, I suppose, will be, I guess, by all accounts, the last stream in October. Happy Halloween in advance. Welcome to the OSR Reddit Roundup. If you've not been here before, what we'll do is I will pull up Reddit, the OSR subreddit to be precise, find stuff of interest, pull them up, talk about it, upvote our fellow Redditors, and rinse and repeat for about an hour or so, give or take. Thanks for joining me. Well, I don't have any programming notes. Let me know if my levels and all that are good. They look good to me, but sometimes such things can be deceiving. So if anything seems awry, let me know in the chat. With that out of the way, let us proceed. I'm going to give this a refresh in a second. Now nothing says sounds good. Well, glad you made it, nothing. Glad that it sounds good. Let me just refresh the page. Make sure we're getting the latest and greatest. I'm using the hot tab, which using for a while seems to be working out all right. So I will keep using it. My kind of broken glasses here. I'm still have to get new glasses. It's bothering me. Oh, here we got a weirding. I guess like the weirding way. That sounds cool. I think a Dune-inspired OSR compatible class. Posted by Working Boy. The wording, a Dune-inspired OSR compatible class. As they posted, they saw Dune last night. They came home and wrote this. Some bullet points. They have a random die drop table-based leveling. Okay, that's interesting. Is that exclamation mark magic powers to mean no magic powers? They don't track spells per day, and they're horny? I don't know about that, but let's give it a look. This is taking us to the Rise Up Comus blog. I will post this in the chat. Not sure if my the sound noise cancellation stuff doing anything, but there seems to be a semi or something that's honking down there in the street. Just made my cat freak out a bit. Kind of surprised me as well. And there's the class if anyone wants to, or the link to the class if anyone wants to check it out as we're reading it or later. Okay, this is actually posted technically yesterday. The weirding saves and levels as a magic user. The description says a scion of an ancient breeding program to produce an heir to the line of wizard kings. There's some more honking. Not sure if you can hear that, but boy, it's loud to me. You manifest weirding powers, an incredible mastery of internal alchemy and utmost physical conditioning. These are almost magical, but are not. This means they are not affected by things like magical resistance, dispel, or anti-magic fields. Only a few weirding powers have a limit on the number of times that you can use them. At first level, and every level of weirding thereafter, toss a dice plural, toss one die onto the weirding die drop level table. That's a mouthful. To determine what weirding power you gain. And so I kind of like how they've done this. So there's an image here, shows it's a medieval, must be from some manuscript, something, a medieval, I don't know what you would call that, a diagram of the human form as it's being dissected, basically, or kind of dissected, where it's cut, split open, sort of in the middle, so you can see guts and things, and there are, and it looks like this, maybe it's for alchemical purposes, because each one of these sort of quadrants of humanity has a different drawing attached, and they've essentially repurposed this illustration for the drop table. I like the drop table for certain things. I think maps and things are neat when they use the drop tables. This, I get what they're going for. Just put some numbers on it. It's asking, so is someone really going to have this printed out and then drop dice on it? how does this work if someone's just downloading it? I like the idea here, but I think you could just put some numbers next to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Essentially, it's a D12. But they've done it as a drop table. So each level, you will gain one of the following: the tears, the eye, the nose, the ear, the whisper, the shout, the tongue, the heart, the hand, the seed, the stride, the foot. The heart is in a weird spot, but I guess it's because of the ear. Just where it is on the diagram, the heart is kind of pointed up at the stomach, or right below the stomach. Yeah, not sure about that, but you got to work with what you got. So let's go through these weirding powers. Oh, and if you do gain one more than once, you gain there's some kind of additional bit you can get. That's nice. So first off, we have the hand. You can move any object that you can see and lift one-handed by intensely gesturing at it. You could move any object that you can see and lift one-handed. So it sounds like a telekinesis move. I'm not sure about the lift one-handed part. I can move any object that I can see and lift. Maybe gesturing. Maybe they mean I have to gesture with at least one hand. Probably could be written a little bit more clearly. If you were to get this again, you would gain +1 strength. The foot. You have perfect balance and are essentially weightless. You can walk on riper or tree boughs or clotheslines. And then the plus is you gain a dexterity, +1 to your dexterity. The stride. When you move, you could ignore the intervening space and teleport to any space that you could have walked. You essentially move too fast to be seen. You do not trigger pressure plates or other types of traps by this type of movement. Now, nothing says, referring back to the hand, it can't be so heavy you can't lift it with one hand. Maybe. I mean, it's really unclear by that description. That's certainly one possibility. Elfbait chimes in and says, maybe they mean the item need be something you could normally lift one-handed. Yeah, same thing as nothing. Maybe, but it's kind of in a weird... Or maybe, I guess that you can move any object you can see and lift one-handed. I see. Yeah, that's just, yeah. I see what you're saying. That could be it. It's maybe a bit unclear. But that's probably right. I will defer to you. That seems right. Any object that you can see that you could also lift one-handed. So we have the foot. Now, it seems like the stride, it's saying, hey, you won't trigger pressure plates. It seems like you wouldn't trigger pressure plates with the foot, since if you're walking on rice paper or tree boughs or a clothesline, you're obviously doing it weightlessly. That seemed to would be more the foot thing than a stride thing. Move, the kind of teleport, I don't know. I feel like some of these are definitely passing into what would be called magic. I suppose the planet depends on your setting. If you have people, I mean, thieves are essentially supernatural, depending on how you interpret thief abilities. So in a way, we could look at these and say, oh, these are analogous to the thieves move silently, right? Which we think of as moving kind of absolutely silently, or hide in shadows as literally hiding in a shadow. Then perhaps some of these are also appropriate in that sense. Hey, Terrence. Glad you made it. The extra is you gain 5 feet of movement. Oh, and I missed some other parts. Okay, so also with the stride, this does not give you the ability to traverse environments you couldn't normally. You cannot walk over acid or lava or through walls, but you can blink between 2 points in space. Quotes on blink. Yeah, not sure about the blinking. I would just maybe do it that if you have attacks of opportunity. And here's the thing, right? In most OSR systems, I don't know if most, but BX, which again is my core baseline OSR, template thing I look at, there's no opportunity attacks. So you generally don't have to worry about that. The the pressure plates and other types of traps is kind of interesting. That still kind of, to me, is more the foot. It seems like we have 2 abilities that essentially could be one. I'm not sure I like the blinking thing. But I think they're kind of pulling up the whole, which I don't think was in the movie at all, the new movie or the old movie, but I think there is a Bene Gesserit concept of, they're moving so fast. Fluffy Griffin says, looks pretty magic to me. Yeah, it's really going to be sort of session and GM, right? We're going to look at it. Are there supernatural type things that aren't magic? Again, I go back to, if you take an expansive reading of the Thieves' abilities, you could look at those as being supernatural, but not magic. So we could say, is this supernatural versus magic? So that was the stride. Then we have the heart. Once per real life hour, you can ask the GM this question. If I do X, will Y happen? The GM will answer you honestly, and you will feel its truth in your heart. Plus, you can use this ability an additional time each hour. I don't think per real life hour is good. That to me, I see that as a once per day kind of dealio. Elfate says it was moving faster than the mind can perceive, but it was not teleporting. He did put, to be fair, or the author did put it in quotes. So they're acknowledging it's not true teleportation, but just that it looks that way. But yeah, maybe faster than the eye for some certain amount of space. So the heart one is interesting. If I do X, will Y happen? Kind of a yes, no. That might even be a better way to put it. You can ask them, it's kind of like wheel or woe, maybe, sort of thing. You can ask them a question and they have to basically tell you yes or no to it, right? If I go into this tomb, will this happen? I mean, obviously you'd want to use a more, you want to give a pretty detailed answer. If I go in the tomb, will I die? Like the GM I can't answer that, right? That's unknown. But it's sort of trying to give you, I guess, that kind of prescience. Hey, what if I do this specific thing? Will this other specific thing happen? But once per real life hour, you'll get some weird things, because if you have a lot of combat and things that might be slowing you down in just your real time game playing, then you could be getting a bunch of them off in within minutes, kind of game time wise. I don't like meta time powers. The one I don't mind is once per session. If they'd said once per session, you could do that. That's fine. Otherwise, I would say once per day. If I was just going to stick to game time, once per hour seems like too much. The tier. If someone falls in combat, before you check and make sure they're dead, you can cry over their body. This has a 2 in 6 chance to restore them to life with 1 hit point. You can only do this once per battle. And the plus is you gain an additional pip in this ability. You can use it all at once or split it up. That one seems... not sure about this one. And I don't know or recall what this is referring to in either the book Dune or the movie Dune. And I haven't read Dune in ages, so I'm not trying to say that this is something made up. It most likely happened somewhere. I could see it happening, or it's from some other part of the Dune legendarium, so to speak. I'm not sure what I would do with this one. I don't think I like it as is. Fluffy the Griffin says, the tier would be hella no in my game. Part of it comes from how am I dealing with death. I'm kind of moving towards liking to give folks extra chances at not dying, not because I don't want to kill them or I'm not okay with them dying, but because I like the added tension of drawing it out. So I like and I talked about this probably a long time ago because I did some stuff with poison, where I like the idea that you're slowly dying as opposed to just being dead. Because if they're dying, that puts the impetus in front of the party gives them the opportunity and then also a bit of the responsibility potentially to do something about it. If you just die, they're dead. Then all they're just going to do is loot your corpse and move on. If you're dying and that dying is taking a fair amount of time, that gives you a chance to do something about it. And I think it kind of puts it, I know it puts me as a player, and I feel like it puts the thing for the players when I'm running a game of maybe there's something we could do about it. Maybe there's something we should do about it. So we should do something about it. So I like that about the concept of you're dying. So I like to, I'm now moving towards giving some kind of padding to just cutting off a death. And I've thought about adding wounds or different things in there, and I go back and forth on that part of it. But I like the concept of dying. And I can see with the tier, if I was already giving some kind of save versus death and maybe drawing it out, that you could maybe get another save if someone's a tier. I wouldn't just say, hey, you got a 2 in 6 chance of just wiping that out. Not at that level. That seems, and then plus if you get it again, you get it a 50% chance of just basically reincarnating people. I would rather say maybe you tier and it gives them another death save. If they failed their death save and they're dying, then, sort of like in 5th edition, you could give somebody a new, they've rolled so many death saves, maybe you could give them a new death save, something like that. If I was using kind of death save or similar system, maybe you could give them an extra death save. If they failed one, then you can give it to them. We got some things in the chat here. Terrence says the tier should be the standard method for resurrection. PCs will have to kidnap and pepper spray a powerful priest to raise a dead ally. Yes, or what happens if the priest tears dry up? That could be a whole adventure. I'd love to cry over your friend, but I can no longer cry. You have to make me cry. Find the thing that will make me cry. There was a really cool French movie, The City of Lost Children, that had a sort of it wasn't exactly that, but they had this whole little bit where this character can't cry, and so they're trying to come up with ways to make him cry, and then there's a whole thing with what could be done with this tier if you can get the tier, and I won't spoil it, but I suddenly thought of that when I was thinking of the priest who can no longer cry. Fluffy the Griffin says, priests in my game can bring a character back from the dead, but the priest sacrifices 1d10 years of their life. Woohoo! Fluffy the Griffin says, they do have a death roll at 0 HP, though. Yeah, so if you have some kind of death roll, I could see with the tier giving them an extra death roll. I would also say that you can't do this during battle. And I'm happy to, in terms of death and dying, that essentially you don't have to make your death roll till after combat or something, because, in movies and fiction and things like that, people take forever to die. I mean, when they're not just, obliterated, they tend to linger for at least a minute. And combat, remember, in game time, combat is usually pretty quick. So I could give them the minute. Because I wouldn't want, I feel like stopping them on the combat to summon your tier, doing that seems a little bit much. So I would have it be something, hey, you can do it after combat. If the person it's within like a minute of combat, so right after combat, and if the creature has failed their death save, you can use the tier and give them one more shot, right? It's a one more shot to make their death save. But not just, you're up with one hit point. Now, nothing says they're only mostly dead. Exactly. That should be you should need the little bellows like Miracle Max had. And you can only bring them back if their reason to live is not to gamble. It's got to be true love, or at least taking out somebody that Miracle Max hates. So that was the tier. Controversial. The tier, a controversial choice. Now we have the eye. Not the eye of Thundera, just the eye. If you close your eyes, you can send your vision roaming. If your eyes are closed, you can see any of your companions, your lord, and your children. You see them as if you had a security camera hovering over them. If your eyes are closed, you're automatically surprised by ambushes unless your other eye is looking in that direction. You gain +1 intelligence. So this one's interesting. So it's a kind of a second sight. You could see any of your companions, your lord, and your children. All right, so we could probably... Well, it's interesting because the only one that's going to matter to most, depending on your game, depending on blah, 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 right, all that. But for the most part, you're generally not playing at the beginning of a game anyway with lords. You're usually some kind of freelance person, though you might have a lord. Probably no kids, so it's really more of your companions. I don't know. I feel like there should be something there. For one, your companions probably your lord might not want you just to be snooping. And I think there should be some kind of save. I think the target of your snooping, because that's basically what you are, it's essentially the snoop. Your snooping should have some kind of save. I would like the tension of if they make their save maybe by more than 2 or 4, then they know you were trying to snoop on them. I want some risk. I like risks with some of these things, and particularly a lot of these. Essentially, there's no range I can see, so you could be in a fortress behind 10 feet of stone and no doors, no windows, hanging out in there spying on people. I want there to be some risk. This isn't something that you have to. Some things that, a combat move can have a risk because you have to be in combat, right? To do your fancy melee smack, you have to be in melee, which is a risk. This has got no risk. And I wouldn't want somebody saying, I'm just going to sit back in town and I'm just going to close my eyes and got to be something else. And I get they're saying, oh, well, look, you're automatically surprised by ambushes. Yeah, but they got to find you. They got to be looking for you. And if you're in the inn, I have a real hard time thinking things are going to ambush you just because. Unless you're giving off some kind of wavelength, right? The astral plane is a buzz. You're lit up like a beacon in the ethereal plane because you're out snooping, so things are drawn to you. Otherwise, unless you're doing it in unsafe conditions, essentially just saying you'll be surprised, like you would be just if your eyes were closed because you were closing your eyes. I mean, there's no drawback. So that one's too much of a freebie. I'd want to amend it to give it some kind of either a price, which doesn't seem to be. I have not seen any of these with other than, what was it, the tier? No, it was the heart. Well, the tier has a once per battle, but I think it should be something you have to use outside of battle. Though maybe that's just common sense. And if they want to use it in battle and just duck down and make themselves a sitting dead target while they're crying over someone, I suppose that's their business. But if there's not going to be a constraint with the eye, I'd want to have a pretty good price for it. Now we get to the nose. Once per real life hour, you can ask the GM any specific question about your immediate environment and receive an honest answer. For example, is there a hidden passage here? You can smell the draft. Is there anybody waiting in ambush? You can smell their sweat. Is there gold hidden here? You can smell the metal. And this is, again, once per real life hour. I don't like that. Make it once per day, once per, if you want to use kind of a short rest thing. I kind of like the short rests, right? Once per short rest. The reason why I like it is it's another reason to use the short rest that you're supposed to be using in dungeons anyway. Or I say supposed to, right? Per the white box and BX probably too. You're not supposed to, every hour of dungeoneering is supposed to include 1 10-minute rest. So if you're going to have those and enforce those as a GM and also in assuming you're going to enforce not taking rest if the party chooses to ignore that, then there should be a price for doing that. And I also think that giving abilities that would recharge when you take that, a breather, whatever you want to call it, makes sense. And they also highlight the short rest kind of mechanic. Now, the only problem with that is if you're out in the wilderness or out in town, short rest, that kind of thing isn't really a thing. So what do you do in that sense? I'm not sure. So I suppose that's something I would need to think about, but I don't like the meta constraints. Once per day, once for long rest, once for short rest, twice per day, level amount of times per day. I don't know, something. Other than that, it's kind of interesting. It has a lot of overlap with the heart, though it's not exactly that, right? So the heart is about asking a question about an action, and the nose is asking an environmental question. We also have, or now we get to rather, the ear. Whenever you hear someone speak in a language that you understand, you can ask the GM what emotion the character is truly feeling. The GM will give you one of the following responses: interest, joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger. This is another one where I think it's just screaming out for the target to have some kind of save, because they may be trying to hide their emotions from you. In fact, most people, most of the time, are probably trying to hide some kind of emotion from the people they're talking to. Am I super happy, or am I just happy because I'm supposed to be happy on the stream? Am I feeling one of those things I may not want you to know? Well, for the record, I'm feeling fine. But I don't think you should just get it for free. And like with the other one that was similar, I think that if you are going to have this and there's a save involved, then if they succeed on their save by some amount, then they detect that you are trying to root out their emotion, that you are being invasive, and that they can respond accordingly. Right? Certainly, and part of that would be, at the minimum, their reaction towards you should go down a couple of points. The seed. Oh no. So here's one that whenever you have sex, you gain 2 abilities. Yes, this is already one that would not want to put in my game. I'm just not interested in GMing sex scenes. That stuff, if any of the characters want to do it, hey man, off camera. And if you're dead set on role playing that, then you can role play that with another group. I am not interested. So any ability that begins with the phrase "whenever you have sex," probably not going to make much of an appearance of my game. But let's see what the rest of this is, because maybe it's something that you can kind of hand wave away the actual thing and just get to when they're using this power. First, you can ask your partner any one question, and they are compelled to answer you honestly. Second, you can choose any of the following: whether to impregnate or become pregnant. If impregnation happens, you choose what features you want the baby to have. If you choose the baby's features, you can even make a physical clone of yourself. Gain +1 Constitution. Puffy the Griffin probably responding back to one of the says, this is basically a free insight skill, and I dislike that skill in 5e a lot. Yes, it is essentially an insight skill. Though I like this a little bit better in the sense that it is a character ability, and we can see it being something kind of supernatural. This person, well, some people do have really great insight on this stuff, and I'm okay with mechanizing that to some degree. But unlike the insight skill, and I should say, when I think about skills like that in 5th edition, I think of them as essentially offensive skills. Insight is not something you just do silently without any traces. Insight is that you are really trying to get it, and it is evident it is a active skill, and people are going to be aware of you. The target is aware that you are trying to find these things. You are trying to detect. You're looking at their eyes to see if they're maintaining good contact. You're seeing if they've got any tells. You are intent. It is an active skill, and when they perceive that, they're probably going to take it negatively. So by the same token, something like that, I want it to have that thing. This is an active, in a way, antagonistic ability, and I want to treat it as such. No, nothing says, I'm not a fan of fortune-telling powers / spells that let you ask the GM a question. It's too hard to gamify. How the GM answers is too much GM fiat. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I think that when you can limit it to yes or no questions, and that lessens it, but I do fundamentally agree with you. It is difficult. It's what makes those kind of prescient soothsaying sorts of abilities, future looks in the future, really hard, because as the GM, we don't have, in the fiction, a god, a deity, some kind of divine or infernal agent may have some kind of real future saying powers, right? But how do we have that work in a game in which fundamentally we as people do not? And I don't know what you're going to do on the other side of that door. But by limiting it to yes or no questions, I can probably get pretty good. And there probably should be that middle ground of it's fuzzy. If someone says, if I go through that door, will I get, will something attack me? And or will I get hurt, right? But it's really 2 ways you can go outside the doorway. If they go left, there's a trap that will hurt them. If they go right, there's nothing. Then maybe I can say, it's unclear, right? The future is unclear. The future shows 2 possibilities. You can kind of mess around with it that way. But that's why I think it's important to really make sure you've drilled in on something very specific that you're answering. Because once you get into bigger gray areas, there's just not enough information. not enough information. And nothing says, yeah, the whole point of the game is that the GM doesn't know what's going to happen. Yep. And even if we did, we don't know what the players do. If there was a trap on the other side of the door and they say, hey, if I open the door, will I get hurt? And I say yes. Does that, but then they make their save and they don't get hurt, like the trap fires, but they make their save and they avoid it. Like, I was lying, or like, what was that then? What did that mean? Right? It's really hard to tell. But like I said, to the extent that you can get it down to something really simple and drill it in, or else go with the future's uncertain kind of thing, I think it's workable to some degree. But I'd love to see some systems if there was any way to really figure out a better way to do it. Fluffy the Griffin says, I basically tell players how they feel about an NPC as a player is likely their character's same instinct. Are they trustworthy? Do you think they are? Yeah, that's what I do. Someone says, hey, do I think this person's telling the truth? My answer is like, I don't know. Do you? Do you think they're telling the truth? But I'm okay with that as an ability. Like I said, just provided that A, targets get saves, because they may very well not want you to know, and B, that there's a chance that you're discovered, and then there's consequences if you get discovered. And this is a special ability, right? Unlike Insight, which anybody can do, and people will try to do like, ooh, I do Insight, and then the whole party's doing Insight. This is one particular class doing one specific ability. So it's not going to create a whole maelstrom of everyone trying to hop on board to do the same thing. So in this case, as a specific ability for a specific class, given the edits I've already talked about that I would do for myself, I would probably be okay with it. All right, so that was the seed, which, yeah. So I don't, what features you want the baby to have? I suppose that would only be physical stuff, and I suppose it can only be something of the two parents. Like you can't just like give wings or I'm going to give gills or things like that, right? And then the idea of making a clone, or I don't know, clone. Probably want to do something. It's not a clone in the sense that it has no intelligence, right? It is a whole separate intelligent being. A clone has a different vibe to me, but I don't know what you would call it because it's not a copy. Maybe clone is a good word for it. I don't know. That one probably would not make it in my game just because I'm not interested in having the sex scenes, and most of my games you're probably not trying to just create family members all over the place. Though it might be interesting if you were going for more of a dynastic game. That is kind of interesting, right? That one, it's more if you're doing something domains, politics, dynasties, when you want to get out there and get your heir up and running, and maybe multiple heirs, and maybe you do feel in some weird way that you want to make clones of yourself, sort of like I've been watching Foundation. I'm a bit behind now, and it's been forever since I read the Asimov book, and I don't remember if this was in the Asimov book or not, but this idea that the Empire essentially has three clones. One is young, one is in sort of at the high point, I guess, at the high point of maturity, and the other one is elderly. And essentially they run it kind of as a triumvirate, though the middle one, the one who's in the prime of life, I guess, is in command, but the other ones get say-sos. That's kind of an interesting idea, and I could see maybe someone else would want to do that. So in that kind of game, I could see that working more. The stuff where you're getting to ask people questions and they have to answer honestly, all of those I would amend to some kind of save and some kind of negative consequence and price attached. Now we get to the tongue. With just a drop, you can determine if something is poisoned. With just a drop, you can determine what a potion does. You can also choose to break down the chemical compounds of a poison or potion once per game session, ignoring any one potion/poison's effects. I'm not sure what they mean by break down. Does that mean drink? Break down the chemical component sounds like something you're doing in a lab. If it just means that you can drink a potion or potion once per game session, ignoring effects, that might be a little bit different. Right? So probably I'd want some kind of, I would probably use a save for this too, except this time it's the person using it who would make a save versus poison, probably, to determine something. I'm not sure why you would want to. I suppose I'm guessing the second part of this is that if you were to drink a poison accidentally, you could ignore its effects. Not so much. The way they have it put in is you're choosing to. Like, here's this vial of poison. I'm going to voluntarily drink it and break down the components. That's weird. Like, why would you do that? But if somebody slipped a Mickey into your ale and you drank it, and the GM's like, oh, yeah, by the way, make that save versus poison, you could say, ho, I use my once per session tongue ability to break down the chemical components without harming myself. Right? So that's kind of how I see it, but it's written a bit weirdly. I don't dislike it. Probably would want to put a point. I'm not big on the meta once per. I've said that once per session is probably my least unfavorite of the meta ones, but for this one, probably once per day. I don't know. Or either, this is one that I wouldn't even mind if they could do it more often, but they just have to make a save. And if they fail their save, then maybe it gets worse. They've accidentally, you fail your save, instead of having no effects, you get double the effects. Or I don't know, some other price attached to that one. Because this one is kind of an edge case. Are you going to be doing poisons all day? Probably not. So I'm okay with this one, the tongue, being something that they can use multiple times. If they have a call for it, to be on call all day doing potion/poison tasting and testing, fine. I'm willing to give it to them. I can add something that way. So this is the one that they gave a kind of a meta currency to that I don't think needed one. Some of the other ones I think need them and don't have them. Fliv the Griffin says they might have an alchemy mechanic in the game and can tell the ingredients. Dunno. Yeah, maybe. I mean, being able to break down the chemical components is interesting. It's just worded a bit, weirdly. Then nothing says, why not just make the person immune to ingested poisons? That's not that powerful. Yeah, that's another thing. They could do that. And then VO Lizard says, hey, VO says, I think they might break down that they mean determine what they are, potentially to be able to investigate or brew one themselves. Maybe. And Elfbait says, I commend this person for making a detailed go at Dune abilities. They are, yeah. I mean, I like the concept is cool. I dig what they're doing. I wish I had a better grasp at this point on all the stuff happening in Dune so I could be more intuitive or make more sense of it that way. Some of the stuff kind of sounds familiar to me, but I don't remember the specifics. I think some of the stuff just needs to be toned down and kind of figured out. Maybe a bit more and just worded to be more clear. But as an idea, it's cool. We have the Whisper. As an action, you can issue one syllable irresistible commands to a single person. They are aware of being controlled and hate you for it. The command can only take a moment to complete, but can be very dangerous. The subject interprets the command in the way that is most advantageous to themselves, but you cannot be ignored. And then they kind of put some like speak. It's all in like Googledy. I guess that's supposed to be like the voice. Kneel. Jump. And then if you get it again, your commands could be greetings, Marcelo. And then let's see. Fluffy the Griffin says, sipping a potion to determine what it does is something I let anyone in my game do. It's one of the experimentation aspects of IDing items. So yeah, in that case, you could probably give them something better. One, they just have to use a drop, right? Not even a sip. So I know you'll see people saying, well, how much of a potion is used up if I sip it? And maybe in your game you don't use up any. I know some people will say, oh, it uses up a quarter or a third or something else. In this case, a drop, it literally does nothing. It also means they only have to have the merest trace, which would be cool in an investigative game or adventure, in which case you find the vial of potion and it's mostly empty, but this guy could come in and take their finger and just get a little drop on their fingertip and touch it, and like Hercule Poirot at a crime scene can suddenly understand, can taste, even though it's tasteless, can taste the poison. Taste that iocane powder. Elfbait says, I seem to recall that in Dune, the breaking down of poisons was just rendering them inert. That's kind of was my thinking, but I could see either way. So this Whisper, again, I think it should have some kind of save. It does have a price. Their examples are interesting because they're not the usual sorts of things that people would ask for. But it gives you an idea. Speak. Well, it says that I can do it in the way that's most advantageous to the target without ignoring the person speaking it. So what do they just do? They just babble. A, B, C, D. All right, you told me to speak. Here's a joke. Two Fremen walk into a bar. Okay. Kneel. That doesn't do too much. And then jump. Not going to jump off a cliff. Jump up and down. Jump forward. So it's interesting. I know there's a command spell that does similar. It's pretty much like the spell, I would imagine. But just their examples are kind of interesting. I like the ones that I would feel like more useful would be flee, run, surrender. Though they don't, they have to be immediate, so maybe surrender doesn't work so well. I don't know. Let's see. Some potions, this is Marcelo, says, I don't recall if it was in Legendary Adventure D&D. You need to drink more than drop to identify. Yeah, I think most people ruled some kind of small drink, like a sip. Maybe it was B1 and the famous Room of Fools. Oh, maybe that's a good one to look at. Maybe. But yeah, I think being able to do it from a drop definitely gives you some advantage. But of course, it's going to depend on your game and how you're running those things for other folk or for other non, in this case, whatever they're calling this, weirding characters. And then the last ability we have is the shout. Your voice itself is a weapon. You deal damage as a dagger just by shouting. In combat, this just counts as an attack action, but you can never be disarmed as long as you can speak. So, yes, this one needs to be fleshed out, I think, a little bit more. This is something you could do against multiple targets. Is it something that happens to just one target? Is it the actual voice, being that things that don't have ears can't be affected? Fusroda, says Lincoln. Fusroda, says Fluffy the Griffin. Yeah. The shout, that's that. I like the idea of the shout. Damage is a dagger. Actually, I like that just because depending on your game system, daggers might do different amounts of damage. So it's basically the same as a dagger. I would probably want some kind of attack roll and or save. If it's an attack roll, I guess I wouldn't. If the shout, so either an attack roll or a save. Probably, right. One of those two. I think it would have to have one. It's definitely cool. It's kind of a thematic Eldritch Blast kind of thing, because you could see that this would be the thing that they would be doing all the time. Why wouldn't you be standing back using the shout if you have it, and you might not have it? You don't get to, you're rolling a die or using that drop table to get abilities, so you might not get the shout, but if you get it, boy, you're going to be doing that all day, every day. One other thing that's interesting, though, and I would definitely want to impress upon them, is if you shout, if that is your ability and you are shouting out, boy, the wandering monster checks are going to be happening in abundance if you're in combat shouting every time. I would certainly want to make that at least a consideration if they're going to use this. But this is good. There's some stuff I would tweak, but that's just me. I put the link. I put the link is up in the chat. I will. There it is. Show it up one more time. From the Rise Up Comus blog, that was The Weirding, an OSR class inspired by Dune. Upvote for my fellow Redditor. Well done. Posted by Working Boy. That's the first one. So we've gone through exactly one item here. But it was a good one. I'd rather have a few that are good than a bunch that either just don't pan out or aren't interesting. All right, here we go. This one's supposed to be good. This is called Pitchfork, Village Creator, a one-page Germanic medieval village creator stuffed to the brim with content and art. Looks well. The description sounds amazing. It's hosted on itch, so we'll see if it's something we can preview. If it isn't, then there's not much to be done with it. But let's see. According to Matt is okay, it's completely system agnostic and essentially a preview of an upcoming game, Pitchfork, which is a medieval folk horror game. The Village Creator is designed to be printed on one sheet of paper, double-sided, and then folded up to make the 16-page booklet. There's also a phone-friendly PDF of the single pages available. Enjoy. All right, let's just see what we get at Itch, and if it's because it sounds really cool, but all right, so I gotta buy it. All right, so I'm not doing any purchases at the moment. So unfortunately, shan't be looking at today, but I will put it in the chat in case folks are interested. If someone does buy it, and it's $2, so it's not insane, reasonable. Let me know if it's awesome. There we go. It's in the chat, and also there we go. Make it a caption right there. So unfortunately, even though I'm super intrigued, got to pass it by for the moment. Nothing says I wish there was an example. It sounds good. Yep, it does. It does. Someone use an example? Not yet. No examples as of yet. Might have to revisit it later because it does sound really cool. Here we have 3 science fantasy locations for weird sandbox settings. Fleshed out settlements based on random generated prompts. Yeah, we'll check it out. Posted to the Eldritch Fields blog. 3 sci fantasy. Oh, Lincoln, you bought it. Awesome. Well, give it a look over and let me know how it is. You know where to find me, I presume. You can the community tab and on YouTube or Twitter or wherever. Drop me a line when you've given its run through and let me know what it's like, and let me know if it's something that you feel like it's worth me taking a look at specifically. All right, so this was posted on October 29, 2021. Pentech. I don't know what Pentech is. Is this German? Germanic? I see the October has a K in it. I'm not. Anyway, the article itself is in English. Let's just go there. 3 science fantasy locations for weird sandbox settings. These are 3 locations for science fantasy hex crawl / sandboxes. These are based on output from the generator that they put together in Inspiration Pad Pro, which is something that I need to on the side. Side note, I need to take a look at that. I actually have downloaded it, but I really haven't spent much time with it. I need to do that. Maybe I'll just stream messing around with it. Give people a look at it if they haven't tried it yet. Just took the results and fleshed them out a bit to make more sense. This whole thing took about 15 minutes, and the many hours poured into creating the generator. I will include the original output of the generator below in the comments so you can compare. All right, so we're going to get some. So this is kind of cool. I like this stuff. I like these fleshing out of the random prompts. Random prompts are great, but oftentimes it's that fleshing out. I think when we did that slime castle, there was that room generator for an Android. It was an Android-based room generator, a room populator. I think they called it. It was more of a room generator. Anyway, and the prompts you got out of it when they just showed them were like, okay. But the actual thing they made with it was really fascinating. It was much more fascinating to me than the original prompts. So in this case, let's see what they got out of it. First, they have Soli, village with a population of 150, ruled by a noble family, the Turquoise Clan. The village used to be surrounded by a stone wall, which is now in ruins. The only part left standing is an archway above the main road, but it isn't maintained either. The locals think it is a dread memento of an ancient horror. Walk around it, never under it, and soil it with garbage and obscene graffiti. Well, first of all, I really like that touch. And the thing I like about it is it's not something that is it's horrible or horrific just in its look. It's just this arch. But it's got it gives you a lot of vibe there about the community. If you are a player and you're in the, you're a player and you're in the party, you're approaching this town and you see this kind of stone arch, just got graffiti and junk and garbage around it, and you see all the locals walking around it. That's really neat. It will probably inspire you to want to check it out. Someone who thinks quickly and is thinking how to make themselves blend in more might decide to walk around it like the locals do, or they're just nervous that something there is going to blow up, and other folks might walk through it. And when they get to the other side in the village, who noticed what they did? The people who noticed them. I suppose there's only 150 people in town, so you're probably going to get outed as a foreigner anyway. But maybe the folks that walked around it get a little bump to their, those reaction rolls because they knew the local custom. Whereas the ones who flouted it, maybe they're considered unlucky, or there's something bad's going to happen to them, some kind of bad omen, and they're a little bit shunned, right? So it's kind of neat, and it's nothing. It's just this arch, but it's infused with character. And then they have a location, the atomic abode of the electronic red dragon, a lively tavern surrounded by standing stones. And then I guess these are seeds, adventure seeds. The village is plagued by swarms of robotic mosquitoes, actually blood-collecting nanobots emerging from an ancient laboratory, buried under the nearby swamps. That's cool. It's a cool location and a cool, different little pest. Nefertiri of the Turquoise Clan, a very religious person, is telling everybody that Orgis, I'm not sure, her identical twin brother disappeared. Actually, she killed him because she was afraid that he might replace her completely. Replace her in what regard? Not sure. But that's a cool little town. Some interesting seeds. I like that location, the ancient laboratory that's in the swamps that is sending out swarms of robotic nanobots like mosquitoes to collect blood. What are they collecting all that blood for, right? The interesting things might be done there. Now we have Corkira, a town with a population of 700 souls, ruled by a council of elders. It's a heavily fortified settlement with 4 prism towers that can fire deadly lasers at each corner. The streets are patrolled by the local militia, the Corkira Rangers. Despite the dry ground, most buildings are on stilts so that the inhabitants can pull up the ladders at night for extra protection. All right, so this place sounds super deadly. Super deadly. It's got lasers. It's local militias patrolling it, and all the homes are built on stilts so that they can be above the road, presumably at night. So they're off of ground level. So if something isn't here that is super deadly, roaming the grounds, that can't obviously climb these stilts at night or at some other time, I will be very disappointed. We have some locations: a smithy, an ancient laboratory that was repurposed as a workshop, mostly produces regular tools and weaponry, but for the right price, the blacksmith, Lightning Ape is his name, offers equipment made out of the weird alloys that remain in the laboratory's repository. The laboratory's repository. The laboratory's suppository. And Lightning Ape. Not Lightning McQueen, Lightning Ape. I really like Lightning Ape, but I feel like the name Lightning Ape is a little bit lost on a blacksmith. Lightning Ape, I'm not even sure what Lightning Ape should be doing. And maybe Lightning Ape is wondering that same thing, having a bit of a midlife crisis. They didn't want to be a smith. They were the captain of the sci fantasy football team. They thought they were going to go on to bigger and better things, and yet here they are in a workshop built out of some old laboratory. Lightning Ape was big in high school. Peaked too soon. Lightning Ape, you peaked too soon. We also have the Corkira Ranger Station, a seedy-looking building. Stinks like a gym. This is where the local militia hangs out and trains new recruits. The Church of the Giggling Goddess. I like that name. This temple is almost in ruins now, as the worship of this deity is discouraged by the council and the militia. I mean, I can understand that, right? Danger's happening, and you're trying, imagine all hell's breaking loose, and people are trying to pray, and the people praying to the giggling goddess are just giggling, laughing, and trying to tickle each other or tickle other people. Doesn't work that well. And I can see after something like that, you just had to put the kibosh on it. Look, number one, the giggling goddess didn't save us. Number two, we couldn't do anything else because you're tickling us. And you're giggling, which is horrifying when I hear giggling behind us and screams ahead of us. Not going to work. Giggling Goddess, you got to go. You got to go. This is not your laugh factory. A single priestess named Thelma struggles to keep the church in shape. And then there's also the last of these locations, Fane of the Awful Goddess. This temple is favored by the council members. Yes, the awful goddess is awful, but only an awful power can protect us in these troubling times. Boy, the awful, the council is probably a better comedian than the giggling goddess. So yeah, I like that the awful goddess is awful, but you need awful to fight awful. Very good. And then the seeds we get for this one, Trachus the Sellsword wants to burglarize the rich Ratcaster's mansion, Oeobasis, or Oeobasis, that makes sense, or Eobasis, I don't know. Oeobasis is how I'm going to pronounce it. The Ratcatcher is a council member and has a monopoly on vermin control. It is rumored that there is a sealed-off dungeon under the Fane of the Awful Goddess, where the essence of the deity resides. The rumor is true, but the awful clergy tries to suppress it. Oh, I like that, the awful clergy. Oh, that's good. You are awful. No, I am not awful as my goddess. I can merely attempt to get as close to awful as possible. Call me bankrupt. Call me terrible. Yeah. And then finally, the last of these three, and I've been very amused by these. Calipolis. Or would it be Calipolis? I'm going to say Calipolis. City, population 2,250 souls, governed by Gotarzis, bastard of Uhatziti, a prominent and paranoid merchant. Clouds of fumes emerging from rotating chimneys hang ominously above the city. The main industry is a bunch of chemical factories, mostly owned by Gotarzis or his associates. Many of the locals are poor and suffer from the poisonous fumes emerging from the factories. The city feels crowded and is full of seedy establishments and dark back alleys. All right. We get some locations. Temple of the Blazing Cape. A radiant piece of cloth, which belonged to the mythical founder of the city, is venerated here. Worshippers who spend many nights kneeling before it attain a phosphorescent glow. They are known as the Brotherhood of the Blazing Cape. All right, so that's interesting. How long does that glow last for? Forever? Just you get it? It's kind of a, interesting, right? Because it certainly will help in the dark. Of course, you're always going to sort of stick out, especially in the dark. The Hexed Sisters Mortuary is the best place to get a proper burial. And ask about their family discounts. Ha ha! Call the Hexed Sisters. It's like the Sister Brothers. City Library, an old establishment with stacks as dark, labyrinthine, and smelly as the city's back alleys. Ew. I mean, I love the smell of books, but if it's smelling like a pee-filled alleyway, there's something wrong at that library. And then we have the Sleaze and Heel Music Hall, a popular establishment with live music and deadly drinks. All right. Maybe not my favorite of the three. I think the other ones just had some more, I don't know, more gameable flavor, maybe. A swig of tea for the working man. All right, now we get to some seeds. Maybe this is where this will shine in the seeds. The most popular person in the city is Paris, the hairy wrestler, undefeated champion. Many would love to see him leading the city in Gotarzis' stead. Dum, dum, dum. So maybe a little intrigue. Paris, the hairy wrestler. Ex-crime lord nicknamed the Proconsul is hiring assassins to kill Gotarzis. Proconsul used to be an important man, but the current mayor's machinations led to his downfall, and the gang war left him shell-shocked. All right, some more sort of kind of political stuff. The Brotherhood of the Blazing Cape want to embark on a sacred mission to a ruined castle. They think the soul of the city founder is imprisoned there. There's a little adventure hook. Some say there are valuable books hidden between all the trash in the city library. I mean, you'd think there would be, otherwise why have the library? All right, so those are the three. And here in the comments, he has put, as promised, the adventure seeds. but I'm not going to read through them. I think that was good enough. And we're at the bottom of the hour, the top of the hour. Bottom, top, left, right. The hour is nigh, and so our time draws to a close. Didn't make it through very much. Sometimes I feel like we go through a bunch of topics. Sometimes we just go through a few. This one we went through a few, but I think they were good. Particularly the Dune. Well, I think we only did 2, right? This and the Dune one, or did we do 3? I don't even remember. But definitely the Dune character class, very cool. Any last thoughts from the chat before I close it off for another Friday? Before you leave, please give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. If you found yourself in here and you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. You'll just get notified a bit when I put up streams and videos. I don't bite. I'm not going to ask for your social security number. Though Google might. Who knows? Fluffy the Griffin says that class was pretty long. Yeah. I mean, look, it had a lot going on, and I try to read through the whole thing. That's just my style. I'm not, and I want to give people the respect of not just skimming, right? I'm not going to be a skimmer. I'm gonna read through it. Reading comments from you guys in the chat about it. Maybe takes us on some tangents of our own ideas and kind of do that. I'm not just going to skim it. I feel like if you post something, the least I can do is give it a good, honest reading. So that's what I did. All right, everybody. Well, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you're watching or listening to this. I am going to sign off. I already gave my spiel for liking and subscribing. If you don't mind, Fluffy the Girl says, no, I admire that. I think it's good. Cool. I'm glad you think it's good. I'm sure to some people would probably wish I would not go through in such depth, but cannot please everyone, right? So just try to do what I do. Terrence says the giggling goddess is fated to destroy the awful goddess at Gawfocalypse. Yep, probably. There'll be, one night only, one night stand at the Apollo Theater or something, right? I mean, literally, could be literally the Apollo Theater. Yeah, good stuff. All right, everybody, take it easy. Game on.